This episode of Reasonably Spontaneous Conversation is brought to you in part by Clay Boykin Life and Business Coaching, because we all get stuck at times. For more information, visit clayboykin.com. By Janelli Bean, for fun and engaging children's books with cute and colorful characters. For more information, visit janellibean.com. And by Wise Owl Organizing, simply set up for you. Organizing consulting and clarity coaching, virtual or in person. For more information, visit wiseowlorganizing.com.
There is word out to the William Morris Agency that I would be happy to accept assignments in areas of acting, directing, producing, or writing that are challenging or exciting or fun to do, and that in those cases the fee involved is not a consideration. The atmosphere and environment is a very definite consideration. So that's self-indulgence. I've in the last couple of years, the things I've done, since I retired from packaging and preparing and submitting materials to the networks out of disillusionment with them. Things I've done have all been done because they were fun to do. I did a picture with Bill I put together and acted in and executive produced a 2-hour movie for television with Bill Cosby because, first of all, I love working with Cosby.
You brought him to television.
Yeah.
Let me interrupt you here for a second, just in case for the people that don't know who you are right now. Sheldon Leonard, you may I just say I want to just say a couple of the things. I mean, this is it's stunning. You've executive produced and been the motivating force behind things like the Danny Thomas Show, the Andy Griffith Show, I Spy, Dick Van Dyke.
Gomer Pyle, My World and Welcome to It. My Favorite Martian, The Real McCoys, the etc. It becomes a tedious.
Sheldon Leonard, you're a pioneer of television. I talk to the writers. I talk to people.
To be pioneers, they be in it early enough.
Be in it, and
it's a matter of timing.
It is. So that is. What is it that you do that brings you a successful show after successful show? Larry Gelbart says that you initiated so many of the forms of the direction that the situation comedy, when you're working with the Danny Thomas Show, that whatever is good about situation comedy came from the things that you implemented as the form.
The term good is a debatable term. Effective, I will accept.
All right, effective. Much better.
For instance, what he may have been talking about, amongst other things, was the fact that in the half-hour comedy field, I emphasized storyline and sought to integrate a self-sustaining story with the comedy, with the jokes. Very frequently a soap opera kind of story, you know. Ideally, at that time, if you could make them laugh for 20 minutes and weep a little for 2 or 3 minutes, you were a success. So we innovated and developed that form. And then in my rebellion, again, matter of self-indulgence, I love to travel. I adore travel. And when I had enough muscle to determine the kind of things I wanted to do, put on the air, I started taking my shows to distant locations abroad. We were the first ones to start shooting American television weekly episodes, other than the specials, in foreign locations.
With I Spy?
No, with the Danny Thomas Show.
That's right.
Took a bunch of them to Europe. And then I made a startling discovery. See, the locations had been anathema to the studios for many years because it meant an elaborate caravan, it meant great expense, per diem charges and transportation charges and all those things. And I discovered that when approached in a certain manner, shooting on locations was cheaper than shooting in the studios. So using that information, I put together I Spy, and we shot in the Orient, and we shot in Africa, we shot in Europe, we shot in Mexico, we shot all over the world. And the trick at that time, a trick which is now generally copied, was to use natural locations as much as you can. It used to be that if they said, let's shoot a studio, recording studio where they're doing an interview, in a recording studio where they're doing an interview, the sound man would come in and say, I don't know, I don't think I can get a boom in there, it'll be in all the lights. And the cameraman would say, where am I going to put my lights? So you can push them back in the corner, maybe I can get some lights here and there. Created all sorts of difficulties. But what had been overlooked was that while such concern might have been valid if you were making a picture for the wide screen, if you were making it for those little rectangular boxes up to 25 inches, diagonal measurement, if you were making it for that, the chances are there was a lot of interference from the dentist next door, a lot of extraneous noise and flicker and whatnot, and you were using time and equipment to build qualities into it that couldn't be transmitted over the air or received in the home equipment.
Just couldn't be done. It was the limits.
So it was terribly, terribly wasteful. Yeah. So by making those limitations a virtue, we were able to shoot. I did the last one with Cosby in Italy. So that's only a year ago this past winter. And now things are different because inflation has murdered us. But at that time, I did the picture about 25% cheaper than I could have done it here with local facilities. And this is with flying everybody to Rome, with keeping them at the Grand Hotel in Rome, with all of the trimmings and everything. And having discovered that, which was a way to combine my career with my favorite pastime, traveling, I beat it to death.
Sounds like your career is your favorite pastime.
Yes, up
It's
to a
been
point. There's
fun
no doubt
for
that
you,
it
hasn't
was.
been?
Up to a point. There's
Right,
no
until
doubt.
yeah.
Because as long as the media in which I worked conformed to the age-old cliche that if you build a better mousetrap, et cetera, that was fine because I was prepared to enter into the mousetrap building business. I was prepared to compete with my mousetraps.
Right.
Are they mice traps or mousetraps? I was prepared to compete with them. But then other factors came in. Factors like, is it designed for the adolescent audience, for the teenage audience? Can we counter-program it against Laverne and Shirley? Can we, is there somebody in it who the kids will latch on to? Etc. All of these considerations had nothing to do with merit. You spoke of I Spy. Not I Spy, My World and Welcome to It. My World and Welcome to It was as good a show as I ever put on the air.
4 Emmys, right?
It lasted 1 year. Everybody went home with an armful of Emmys, Christopher Awards, Sylvania Awards, and what have you. Golden Globes, you name it. Everybody went home with those. We canceled after 1 year because it was too adult. Now this was a bad enough crime to be too adult, but to be too adult as the lead-in to laugh in was an unforgivable crime. At 7:30, the set belonged to the kids who just got up from the dinner table while Mom and Pop were washing the dishes. In the days when one had sponsor support, in my case, the powerful support of General Foods and Procter & Gamble, in the days when one had sponsor support, you could go to Procter & Gamble and say, for God's sake, get me moved into a 9 o'clock time spot where I can play the show for grown-ups, for whom it had enormous appeal. Male, the most literate male I've ever seen coming in for a television show. And the Procter & Gamble, with their powerful leverage, would say, look, either you move the show or we're going to take our daytime business over to another network.
I bet that caused a few people to sit up straight.
A lot of Valium was eaten. And when those days passed, when the sponsors stopped protecting a show and moved into the position where they were buying a minute here and a minute there, then of course the vacuum was filled by network executives, many of whom, the ink still fresh on their diplomas, would take, for example, a joke that had been carefully worked out that I was ruthlessly stealing from Jack Benny, let us say, and rework and say it isn't funny that way.
Yeah.
Well, Up yours, buddy. I'm not about to concede that that my, maybe he will be indeed a prodigy in 20 years, but
Yeah.
right now, like wine fresh from the press, it isn't going to be drinkable for another 10 years, and so they're not usable. Their comedy talents are not usable for quite a while. However, up till that time, yes, I enjoyed it very much.
You're 72 years old now. This is incredible to see. What does it look like? What does the world look like to you from this platform of 72 years?
Terrible thing, I have to say, and answer your question. Looking back over your shoulder, the world looks better.
Does it?
In every respect. Isn't that terrible?
It is. Damn right. I mean, considering all the things that you've done and the person that you are.
Let's take it from my first recollections of New York City, where I was born and brought up to a point. I go to New York City fairly frequently now. And I feel uneasy in it. I feel harassed. I feel threatened in New York City. I know that my blood pressure rises 20 points in 2 or 3 days just adjusting to the city. It's a bankrupt, I don't mean financially bankrupt, it's bankrupt
Spiritually
in broader
bankrupt?
human terms,
Yeah.
as are so many of our cities. And I feel regret for it. Now let's leave New York and move on to California, which is the next step in my development. And of course, I remember it before smog. I remember it before traffic jams.
Yeah.
I remember it when there was excitement and glamour, and a cheap commodity, but still fun. When there were all sorts of exciting things happening here, and when the motion picture business, which dominated the city, was also full of excitement and adventure. And so it goes. You want to talk about Paris and London and these places, the same thing applies. Hong Kong, I was just back to Hong Kong last February. I celebrated my birthday in Hong Kong, as a matter of fact. Last February, I was back to Hong Kong. Now, my familiarity with Hong Kong only goes back 14 or 15 years, 16 years.
But it's different.
Oh.
But what, all right,
It's now Pittsburgh on the harbor is what it is. It's Pittsburgh with Chinese instead of Polish walking through the streets. And Tokyo, my God, Tokyo. Again, I was in Tokyo at the same time. I was on the way to Hong Kong by way of China. We came through China. Stopped off in Tokyo just overnight. Now again, I remember Tokyo from shortly after the echoes of the war had died down in the 50s. And I remember a Kobe steak, which is the kind of steak where they massage
the cow, right.
I remember Kobe steak in the Asahi Steakhouse off the Ginza for $3.50, $4, which seemed a very high price when the yen was close to 400 of the dollar. A steak dinner in Tokyo now, 2 people sitting down in a good restaurant to a steak dinner with the appropriate accompaniments. Cannot get up from the table with a check of less than $250 to $300. And the Japanese, who were accommodating and courteous and hospitable in those days, have become affluent. And along with affluence, there are many good things that come with affluence. There are also many bad things.
How have you avoided in your life the bad things? What are the things that affluence? You are an affluent man, but you have kept your figure, you have kept your vitality, your direction in life. You haven't let affluence.
For whatever reason applies, affluence to me has meant indulgence in certain limited areas and has not applied to other areas. I said before I'm not acquisitive. That still turns out to be true.
You're not inquisitive about the...
Acquisitive.
Acquisitive.
I'm not eager to acquire condominia in Maui or whatever.
You have a beautiful home in Beverly Hills, but yet it is not a palatial 14-acre retreat, but it is beautiful.
It serves all our needs, and we've been living there for 20 years.
Yeah.
I have, as you saw, a Rolls Royce, but that's 9 years old now.
Mm-hmm.
I still enjoy it because it's a beautifully engineered piece of equipment. When I travel, unless circumstances compel me to go otherwise, I like to go in first class. If I go to a hotel, I prefer a suite to a room.
Mm-hmm.
These are all matters to which I can accommodate to a change in all these areas because
Yeah.
I've lived after
Both
all
ways,
in
haven't you?
YMCA
Yeah.
hotels in Chicago, and I've lived in
Yeah.
all ways, and I can if necessary. But given a choice, I prefer to
Mm-hmm.
live in that fashion. As far as other things go, I have no. My wife's tastes are adjusted to mine, similar to mine. She is not a recklessly spendthrift person. Our living style is contained within reasonable bounds by her inherent sense of economy. And at my present age, it seems likely that I can make it on what I've got without scrambling for any more than I have. So I have no desire for boats. I'm not a reckless gambler on none of those things which waste money.
So where are you? Have you dealt with, now that you're 72, with your own death and your own feelings about where you will be going?
In a certain limited sense, in the sense that I've stopped saying, as we once said, someday we'll do this or that or the other thing. Now we say, let's do this or that or the other thing now. After all, I've seen, not that I'm thinking in terms of my own death, I'm thinking in terms of the countless people
That you have.
who are no longer with us,
Mm-hmm.
the ones who've passed from the scene. I'm saying that however kind fate may have been to me, sooner or later something's going to catch up with me.
How do you feel about that?
Indifferent.
Indifferent?
Indifferent, yes. I'm not going to seek an early demise, nor am I going to run too hard to avoid it. Yes, I do run too hard. But that's for another reason. I run about 6 miles a day.
Mm-hmm.
And that's more than is approved for my age. But I do that because I feel better when I do it, because I can play golf better, and I can eat better, and I can drink a little more freely without my conscience hurting me. But other than that, I'm not terribly distressed by the inevitability and probable proximity of it. It really doesn't matter that much.
Mm-hmm. You have, what was it that you brought to the essence of your being an executive producer? I mean, to show after show after show. What was it that you brought there? I mean, I hear of your organizational skills, that you would bring writers in during the summer and you would have work out the scripts and talk about them, that you're an enormous respecter of talent. That when you see a talent, I mean, you let that person do the things that they're supposed to do. These are the things that I picked out as the essence of the things that you do so well?
It's certainly a part of it, but not all of it.
Tell me.
Organizational inclinations, yes, because I am uncomfortable with loose ends or with inefficiency, and so I always sought a structure, an organization which performed efficiently without waste of time or money or talent. Having been around the business so long, I developed what may have been present in an undeveloped character at first, but at least it is now developed, a sensitivity towards talent in many fields, talent in writers, directors.
Lighting people, and the whole bit, right?
Yes. Another thing
How did you develop that sensitivity? That's
by being
fascinating.
exposed to enough of it.
And keeping your mind
over
open?
40-odd years, having worked with the greats and the near greats and with the ones who were going to make it, the ones who didn't. I've not always worked. I once told John Garfield, then Julie Garfield, working in a play in New York, a thing called Having a Wonderful Time in the 30s. And he got an offer to come to Hollywood, and he came to me and said, "What should I do?" He said, "We got this play. It's a successful play here. I hate to do the bit where you jump from a successful thing into a failure. What should I do? And I said, Julie, let's face it. You got a Hollywood offer. You're in a hit play. If I were you, I'd stay with the play because you got to realize that you're not the type that would make it in Hollywood. So my sensitivity to talent has some gaps in it. But,
have you been able to accept your own mistakes? Are you a perfectionist, or how do you
not only accept them, but the people with whom I can work most comfortably are the people who perceive them and point them out, and for a very selfish reason. I am protected from the consequence of my mistakes by having people of that nature around me. I make fewer mistakes because I will listen to Jackie Ellison or Danny Arnold or Jay Sandwich or whoever it may have been, and thus be protected from the consequence of the mistake I was about to make.
Listening, you hear. You listen and hear.
Not only hear, but demand it. I will not have...
God, Howard, no wonder you've been so successful.
I want no part of oh, yes, Sheldon. Oh, that's a great idea. Did you hear what Sheldon said? Isn't that great? That turns me off like right now. But somebody who says, that's a pretty stupid thing to say. Bring that fella.
I want to talk. Did you have, you still enjoy performing, acting?
Yes.
Tell me about, you created characters over your life, but the gangster character, the head gangster character that you have created was so strong in my mind and so strong in so many people's minds. Tell me how that character came about. What a delight to be able to create, to me, like Jack Benny did, that character of the penny pinching character that everybody identified with. To be able to create a character that so many people fall in love with must have been of one of your accomplishments that just would have. I know if I did it, I would be.
Well, being brought up in New York during the 20s, 30s, I knew a lot of them.
Did you?
Oh, I knew a lot of them, yes. I knew Costello and Schultz and Fay and a lot of them. Being in the theater.
Yeah.
They were all
part of the glamour, right?
On the boundaries of the theater. They were all part of it. They were part of Broadway, which was the heart of the theater. I knew them. And all I played on the screen was the guy that most of them thought they were.
Were?
They seldom were. There were one or two who were pretty close to Benny Siegel, known as Bugsy Siegel, was pretty close to the guy I played. Clothes Horse and Pseudo-Elegance and a lot of things. Benny's Survivors and Friends, I'm talking with affection of him. And what I did is play them, and play them with an added component which was not always recognized.
Which was
with
what?
a degree of satirization, which amounted to, which helped comedy. When it was part of comedy, it worked very well. But otherwise, I exaggerated and extended them a little. But it worked. It worked with them. I became their protagonist. I became, when I when I was working in Chicago with Martin and Lewis, I was positively adopted by the whole underworld. You know this guy?
Hey.
Yeah, that's the guy. You see him with the cigar in the mouth and the big in the hat. So I convinced them. But that wasn't uncommon. I remember.
Is it a commitment to the character that when you play it? I mean, tell me as a performer. We were talking with Doris Robertson and her performing. And when you perform, do you commit to that character? You become that?
No. In certain stages, and this is a modification of the Stanislavski method that I'm about to describe, in certain stages you have to have a degree of involvement, if not commitment. You have to transfer yourself to some extent into the skin of the character you're playing. You do it for a while. You feel his rages. My rage at a cup of spilled coffee might express itself in... That's something I can wipe that up with. Benny Siegel's rage at a cup of spilled coffee might be, "What idiot put that there? Look, I spoiled the pants. What are you going to..." So to some extent you identify with the guy you're playing until you have found the various reactions, the various parts that integrate into a total character. From that point on, I stand outside him and watch him. I get outside and see how is he doing it. Is he doing it well? When he reached for that coffee, did he reach for it in character, or did he, who did he reach for it? As Sheldon Leonard would reach for it, or as Benny Siegel would reach for it? And I watch it and supervise it, correct it, and control it to as great an extent as I can. Now, after I have put together the parts of the character, from that point on, I'm detached, intellectually detached from him.
Intellectually, you're an incredible intellectual, Sheldon Leonard. You have done, I mean, I know you from Columbia, right? Columbia University?
No, Syracuse University.
Syracuse University. You, but I'm feeling the power of your intellectual mind, but yet you don't seem so attached to it that you cannot talk on many levels. You haven't been stuck only in intellectualism, yet I don't know if I'm feeling the power of your intellect.
I think that's a pretentious description of it, for which I thank you. But again...
But it could have hurt you if you'd have been stuck in the intellect, because then people couldn't hear you. They couldn't hear the words that you were saying, so you can translate them.
Well, don't forget, I was a kid who was brought up in the Bronx and in Brooklyn, in the heart of New York, in what was then a real D's, Dumb and Doe's atmosphere. I was brought up that way. My contact with what you choose to call intellectuality came quite accidentally. In high school, my best friend, later became moderately prominent character actor, J. Edward Bromberg, my best friend had a rheumatic heart. I was deeply involved in athletics. I played football, I rode on the crew, I played water polo, did various other things of a physical nature. Joe could not do any of these because of his bad ticker. He could not share any of my activities, and we were very close, very fond of each other. However, I could share some of his, even though I was unaccustomed to the literary society and the dramatic society and the bibliophiles and these other organizations in which he found his after-school hours recreation and interest. And a remarkable bunch of young intellectuals were functioning at that time in Stuyvesant High School, which was my high school in Lower New York.
Yeah.
A remarkable bunch of them, and through them I learned esoteric terms and names like Schopenhauer and Nietzsche and Kant. And out of curiosity, I began to dabble in them. I began to try to understand more than I did at the beginning, and developed along the way a great affection and respect which lasts to this day for the skillful word carpenters, people who could use the language beautifully, economically, memorably. I still think to this day I use this as an illustration when I want to cut out of a show. Hey, get with it, man. Come on. Do your thing. You got to do your own thing, right? And I say how much more beautifully this was said when Shakespeare said, above this, above all, to thine own self be true. It shall follow as the day of the night, etc., etc. He's saying the same thing as you got to do your own thing, but he was saying it in a manner that has stood the test of centuries. And the other idiom will last until a new bunch of irreverent young people come along to create their own. And so with this developing respect for words came a developing respect for ideas. That combined with an incurably academic approach to almost everything I do. To golf, I want to know